Welcome. In this lesson, we're going to talk about something that you either probably already feel comfortable doing and love, or something that might be a bit more challenging, but please stay with me. We're going to sketch, and I promise you'll get some quick tips to make it just more accessible. I really want to encourage you to try putting your own marks on the page without any overlay of a sense that it has to be perfect. You know what? Perfect lines are boring. So let's just try some different tips and tricks out so that everybody can feel comfortable putting some marks on the page. In this lesson, we'll cover these tips for creating meaningful pages with that sketched content. I'll show you some techniques to make sketching easier and less intimidating, and I'll also show you some ways to use your camera to help you see things, which is really the first step in sketching. Sketching really, in my mind, has three different genres, and oftentimes in art classes we ignore two of the three. So you've all probably figured that most people sketch from observation, and that becomes our high goal, is to sketch something we're looking at to make it look like the object we're looking at. But I have to tell you, we can also sketch from our memory and from our imagination. Think of young children and how easy it is for them to sometimes pick up a crayon or a pencil and just draw, and they use symbols to indicate the tree or a parent. And then we can also sketch from our imagination and draw wild animals or beach scenes that we can't even picture actually visiting, but something in our imagination. It all has to do with the permission that you give yourself to play with whatever seems to work for the moment so that you can anchor your experience, get your pages alive. A lot of these decisions around what kind of sketching to use depends on how much time do you have, what's the lighting like outside, and whether you're feeling comfortable enough to actually open your sketchbook in the bookstore and start working. Honestly, sometimes I say to myself, gosh, I've been walking around this park every day for hundreds of years. How can I make today different? So a lot of it is just the mindset or being intentional about looking for things you can draw. A feather is incredibly easy to draw. I'll show you that in a second. So is a leaf. And remember what we did in the last lesson with sketching around the shells, we can do that as well. So let's go back to the vignettes that we prepared our pages with. I've got the feather I picked up in the park. I'm going to just quickly sketch that in. And remember, this feather doesn't have to actually look exactly like the feather I'm putting on the page. I also use really basic materials. This is just a regular old pencil. You don't need to go get anything fancy. And I'm just getting in the general shape of the feather with what I call my sketching or groping lines. If I'm off a little bit, it doesn't matter. I can go back and simply erase. Like right here, it's way too wide, so not a big deal. I'll throw that center piece in, and then I'll make that kind of fit a little better. Now when I look at it, I have my sketchy line, my groping line, and a line that actually looks more accurate to my eye, so it's okay if you erase. And I'm just going to extend this out just to make it a little more lyrical going out of that box. Once I have that drawn with my pencil, my eye picks out which line works a little better. I can go back over it with my pen. And again, I love these microns because I can get a really fine tip, or I can get a pen that's got a bit thicker tip. I can also press down slightly harder, and that additional pressure might darken the line. One trick for making your sketches with pen more interesting is to, in fact, try to vary the line thickness. So wherever it's possible, and you remember, go ahead and darken that line, and then leave some areas nice and thin. Now, instead of drawing this entire spine, I hope that's the technical term, I'm going to just draw a portion of it, jump over another bit, and draw a little bit more. Why? Because your eye will close these lines up. It helps engage the viewer a little bit. Look what happens now when I erase those pencil marks, even the ones I didn't like. There's my feather drawn with some thick and thin lines right here. I like that a lot, so I'm going to add some thickness right in here. I'm satisfied with that. That gives me the basic shape. I could certainly go back because this feather has that beautiful orange color on it, and this section here is a bit darker. I could now go back and take my watercolor, and because that pen isn't going to move at all, I can get a little bit of the orange painted in just as a suggestion. And when I work with watercolor, I always like to have my paper towel. Ooh, look at that. I can blot it up and it lifts up the color to just the right tone. I also found a leaf while we were walking in the park. And again, I was looking for things to draw. It engaged me in the activity. That's part of this whole process of journaling the everyday is we can engage in these mundane activities, things that we do every single day, but we can engage in a different way to just make it that much more joyful. So here's the leaf I picked up. I'm going to put that in this circular frame. And again, just because it's kind of fun to go outside the area, I might get the top of the leaf. I'm going to put it off center. And I'm just picking up some of the details. Actually, I think what I'm going to do here is really work on the beautiful veins on the inside. So I'll continue this sketch in pencil, getting the lines in the way I'd like them. I'll go over that pencil with a pen, trying to vary my line. It's called line quality, trying to vary going from thick to thin. And then I'll erase the pencil, and then if I feel like it, I'll pop back in with some color just to punch up the page a little bit. The other thing is that I often use my cell phone camera as I'm wandering. That too helps frame my vision, helps frame my view to help me find things that will be exciting to draw later. So while I was out, I took some pictures just of the general park scene. And now I'm looking back at this photo and I can see a number of interesting trees. There's one in particular that I'm going to play with. And oh, look, I happen to have a nice rectangular shape that is pretty long. So that's going to be perfect to sketch this tree out. Now for this, because I'm pretty confident drawing the tree, I'm just going to go right in with pen, but really do what works for you. If you're more comfortable with your pencil, go for that first. I'm just going in with pen because I've probably drawn 4,000 trees by now. That was all last week. Earlier, I probably drew a few more. And I'm using my sketchy line. And again, remember what I said about perfect lines, how that's a little boring. So if I get a wonky kind of mark on the page, that's fine. It just makes this page more alive and certainly more authentically personal. And one of the things that I love to do is add some watercolor with the pen. So I see that there's a nice strong shadow under that tree. So I'm going to just grab a little bit of a cool color and just try to get in some shadow. And I know that the trunk of the tree is in some shadow. And just because it's fun and I happen to love the color purple, I'm going to just be very unrealistic and get some purple leaves on, because that just makes me happy. And again, just like we did with the pen, trying to go with darker and lighter areas, try that with your watercolor, where you're going for darks and lights together. It's just going to make your sketching, your quick sketching in your journal that much more interesting. Okay, I'm satisfied with that tree. Perfect? No. Fun? Sure. Another thing that I try when a scene might be completely or particularly complicated is working with a single color. It helps reduce the noise, if you will. So I'll take a look at a scene, take a picture of it with my cell phone camera, then I go into the editing mode and I change the filter so that I get away from the color and I go into black and white. Wow, that is so strong and such a great tip for sketching. It helps you see that the water sometimes is the lightest thing in the picture, as opposed to assuming that you're going to paint the water blue, even if it's a creek or a lake in a city park. It's far from blue. But it helps you see what we call values. In other words, the darks and the lights. If you see those darks and lights, you can translate that into your quick sketch painting much more easily. I do want to remind you that we're sketching with these brushes, these water chamber brushes. We're not doing full-on watercolor paintings, so we're just going for a very quick sketch with this. So I've got the picture in front of me that's black and white. I've sketched it out lightly in pencil, and I'm coming in with a single color. I chose this kind of brown just for the vibrancy of it. And I test my colors out right next to the picture. I can see there's some great shadows under the tree, and there's some shadow under that fellow walking. So I'm just going to add some darker value watercolor right under this guy walking. And again, I always have my paper towel with me, so if something gets on just a little too dark, I can blot it up. That's perfect. That's just the way I want it. Then I can see that in the water, I've got just a bit more mid-tones so that it's not perfectly white, the white of the page here. I'm just going to add some lighter color, even though it's the same color, just to bring some of that in. And then if that got a little too much, I can blot it with my paper towel to pick it up just a little bit. There we go. Now the water has the full-on white. It has a light tone. It goes to grays, a gray tone, and then the real darks. So this monochromatic approach is really super fun. Try it with different scenes, especially anything that's complicated and busy. Working on a memory map is a really great way to anchor your experience. It jogs your memory, it holds your thoughts in one place, and it can be just a delightful way to record a day or an adventure. A memory map is a good place to use what I call the symbols in drawing. You know how everybody maybe laughs at somebody who still, as an adult, draws a tree like a lollipop? Well, a memory map is a great place to actually do that. You can go ahead and draw the sun looking like a circle with rays coming out. You can draw a duck as a simple shape. So a memory map is a great place to draw with symbols. Here are a couple of tricks when you're doing a memory map. Start with your pencil to indicate where the streets might be, if you're including streets in your map. And then you can go over it with your pen, just drawing those kinds of lines instead of drawing all the lines going through. It's a little less confusing. Once you've drawn in your streets, then I would erase the pencil and go back to my watercolor pencils. Remember, we talked about using neutral colors, so this is perfect for lightly shading around the streets to make it look like a real map. Once I have shaded lightly, I then take my water brush and I blend that out and let it bleed a little bit and fade into the interior spaces. That looks like a street map to me. If I want to add a lake or a stream, I can just, again, use a symbol for an area that might be a lake. And then I can use that blue and I can wet that and control it pretty well. Of course, you can do this with regular watercolors as well. I just like the way these pencils work, and they're so portable. Now, if I want to add, as I was saying before, some symbols in here, I might go ahead and draw my tree in the old-fashioned lollipop way, and the bright sun. And on my walk the other day in the park near my house, there were a lot of geese. I'm not drawing them from observation, I'm drawing them from memory, just like symbols of geese. I've put that together on this little pop-up page to create my map, and I want to point out two other things about trying to draw a map. The other common element of a map that really will punch it out is to put some kind of border around your space. That's called a neat line. It doesn't have to continue all the way. I can come right over that building there and put in a line and a line down here. So I can let some of my drawing go off the edge, but that border helps just focus on this area. And the other really great thing to put in a map is a compass rose. I love looking at compass roses on maps I find all over the world because they really vary. Yes, they all have north, south, east, and west, but what's in the middle of them is entirely up to you to be creative and innovative with, or you can find a lot of copyright-free compass roses online. Include that in your memory map. It'll really sing and say, this is a map of my day. This trick has a funny name but is really effective. Try the backside approach. What I mean by that is, if you want to include some people in your sketches, draw them from the back. The shape of the figure is much easier to see and just work with in terms of basic shapes. I found it really helpful to look at the James Richards class called Sketching the Energy of Places, which shows you the proportions and quick ways to draw people in motion. Here's an example of that backside approach. I took a photo of these people while I was traveling. I did not have time to stand there in the middle of the sidewalk with my book and all of my equipment, but I did use my cell camera to take a picture of them, and then back in the hotel, I worked on the quick sketch and then quickly filling in the watercolor. When I was at the park, I took pictures of these two people as they walked away from me. It was very discreet. They didn't know I was taking their picture. And the other thing that I did on my camera was I took the photo and rotated it so it was upside down. If I rotate the photo, it tends to kind of play with your mind a little bit, and it makes it easier to sometimes see the lines and the shapes when something is turned upside down. Some of you might remember that Betty Edwards book from 1980 called Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain, where one of the exercises was to turn the picture entirely upside down. You see it differently. So I do that with the photograph right in my camera, and it's just a lot easier for me to see the shapes and the negative shapes and the proportion. In this picture, I divided it in half and in half again, just so I could see on the photo that I took sort of what's in this case it's upside down, so what's in the top half, what's in the bottom half. And mainly I was looking for the shape of these angles and the angles of the line here, the angles of this space, and also the slope of the shoulders. Actually, with it upside down, I see that the left and the right shoulder are pretty close, although this one kind of angles ever so slightly. And again, I'm a fan of using sketchy lines, which allows my eye to pick out what is going to actually look more realistic. So I'm using a lot of really sketchy lines, pretty light, just so I can see what's going to look more realistic, what am I going to keep, and what will I erase. It takes a little bit of that pressure off. And again, I'm not trying to make it perfect. All I'm trying to do is just to get a general shape, because my goal is not to draw it perfectly from observation, just to get the mood, just to capture that moment, which seemed very romantic at the time. So now I'm going to turn the book around. Oh yeah, I like the way that the head is fitting on top of the shoulders there. So I can erase those lines which were incorrect. My eye is picking out the correct lines. On her head, I see that the correct line that looks more realistic is out over here, and that squared off head is incorrect. So I'm just going to erase that. Now I'm ready to go back in like I did with my other images, use my pen, throw in some watercolor, do some writing. I could easily put in a banner here to pull in some text to make this just jump out even more, and continue to build up my page. Another way to capture an image and personalize it and use your cell phone is to take a photograph and print a small version of it. Now, I will just pause here and tell you, I have found a portable printer that does a great job with that. It will connect with your cell phone and print these small pictures, but you can do that on a home printer really easily. So print out a small picture, or print out a regular size picture and cut out a small area. Attach that to a journal page, and then just have a blast extending the scene. In this case, this was the dive bar I went into with my friends, so I just was able to capture a small portion of the edge of the building. I used my pencil to extend that image from memory. I don't really know what the edge of that building looks like. I do know that it was that crazy color red, terracotta, maroon, I don't know, it was every color imaginable with some turquoise trim. So I just made this up. I extended that with my pencil. I went in with watercolor and then just added some things that I thought might be fun to be there. Here's a place that I could paint in some flowers or whatever. The other thing is that this bar is actually across from a major highway. I didn't want to draw the highway for some reason. So what I did was just use my imagination and extended this out and then put in our beautiful mountain view from memory right there. So one thing about extending the scene is it lets you totally adjust buildings and all kinds of things just to satisfy you. Another way to extend the scene is to use a picture you find in a flyer or a brochure. Here's an image of New York. I've attached that, decided to use that picture on top, instead of staying in that circular vignette that I had put on the page earlier. Remember, you get to give yourself permission to break all your own rules. So here I can take a pencil and extend these buildings using my imagination, what I think New York City looked like. And I could go back in with my watercolor and extend that out and put as much or as little detail as I'd like. So extending the scene is another great way to just add some oomph to your page and give you a chance to explore how to paint and sketch in a way that is not intimidating. So that's the whole message with this lesson. Please give yourself permission. Try things out. Even in your mind, if you're quick to say, oh, I'm not an artist, I don't sketch. Okay, fine. Go sit by yourself and try it. Erase your lines if you want or don't. The choice really is yours. Give yourself permission to draw from your imagination, to draw from memory, or to even go ahead and use the symbols from 3rd grade. The point is to communicate and anchor your moment. Coming up in the next lesson, we bring it all together. We take that cupcake and add the icing and the sprinkles. We take our pages and just finish them out to bring them to a place where it's really satisfying, where the pages are full of energy and brings us joy.